Hello, I'm Lieutenant David Cullen. I've been serving with the Fleet Marine Force and 1st Marine Division for 2.5 years as battalion chaplain. In this program, you'll meet 3 chaplains at various stages in their service to the Marines. It is our hope that their experiences will help expedite your transition to the FMF.
I've been in the Navy now for 7 months. I just came out of chaplain school in November, so just 4 months ago. Brand new, it's my very first assignment as a chaplain. Before the Navy, in the civilian world, I was a young adults pastor, working with 18 to 35, kind of college age ministry at a church. After that, I did a unit of CPE, really loved chaplain type work from doing that. Got a chance to be an adjunct professor for about a year at a Christian college, and all of that kind of wrapped into my choice to want to pursue a Navy chaplain career. Yeah, I did volunteer for the Fleet Marine Force. It was a lot of the chaplains that I talked to when I was interested in becoming a chaplain said that they've absolutely loved serving in the Marine Corps. That Marines love their chaplains, chaplains love the Marines, and that if I can get into that, it'd be a phenomenal experience. So when it came up, I said, yeah, I'll take that one for sure. Certainly the challenge of it, I think, is intriguing. You know it's going to be a challenging billet, but just the fact that you know that you're going to be valued and appreciated for what you can bring as a chaplain in the Marine Corps was exciting to me. Some of the challenges I think associated with it are certainly the physical demands. A lot of PT, it's a very physically demanding, but at the same time, the physical demands bring about their own rewards. So you know that when you're PTing with the guys and you're hanging with them, that you're in, and when they see you out there with them and spending that time, you're going to have this. They're going to welcome you in as almost one of their own, and I kind of knew that coming in, and that was the kind of experience that I wanted to have. It's just being brought in. Sure. In 2-1, we've got this upcoming deployment to Afghanistan. Certainly a lot of excitement, anticipation. At the same time, uncertainty and a lot of things that are unknown, and so there's a lot of emotions that go through me, from just extreme excitement and looking forward to it, to fear of the unknown and what's it going to be like to be in a combat zone, and what are our guys going to be dealing with. But also to be able to have that kind of access in ministry to the troops where you're just with them 24/7, it truly is an incarnational ministry. And to me, that's exciting, to just be with the guys all the time, being able to be available 24/7 for them and whatever needs might come up. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm excited about that opportunity. Learning more about Afghanistan and the culture there, getting excited to just go and experience that and meet the people and see what they're like is certainly exciting. I wish I would have come in with was something that I was actually told in chaplain school, but didn't necessarily understand, I think, until I experienced it. And that's when I got into the fleet, when I got assigned to the battalion that I'm with. I went through a very strange period of loneliness. I just felt incredibly alone. And that in the civilian world, I went through 4 years of Christian college. I went through 3 years of seminary. So for those years, I was surrounded by people of deep faith. And then even in ministry, in the church, in the hospital, in the school, it was a Christian college. It was always around people of deep faith. And then you come to the battalion and you don't know anybody. It's a brand new world, a little bit of a culture shock. And you don't necessarily have those people around you 24/7 to support you and lift you up in prayer or whatever else that it is that you need. They're there, certainly they're there, but it's a matter of learning who they are. And the more you're with them, they come out of the woodwork and introduce themselves to you. And so what I learned was that it was easy for me to substitute my own personal spiritual life for the relationships with spiritual people that I had. And that was a hard lesson to learn. And one that we were told in chaplain school: make sure that your faith is solid and that your spiritual life is rooted deeply, because when you get out there and you experience that loneliness, it can be challenging. And I experienced that loneliness. I didn't think I would. I thought I was okay, you know. And then when I got into the fleet, you know, I realized that there was a new dimension and a new depth to my spiritual life that I needed to tap into, that would sustain me more than just the relationships I had with other believers. That was kind of the substitute, I think, for my own personal spiritual life. So I think I wish I would have done more to spiritually prepare myself for being in the fleet. I certainly recommend people to go deeper in their spiritual life, even if they think they're deep now. Figure out a way to tap into more depth in that walk with God. On the other hand, on the other side of that too, go deeper in your physical life. I mean, the infantry is incredibly physically demanding, and you know, you start with mild humps of 5 to 8 miles, but we're working up to 20 plus miles, you know, in flak and Kevlar and packs and everything else. So, you know, I thought I was in pretty good shape and doing pretty well on the 1.5 mile run and all that stuff. And then, you know, 1.5 miles is a drop in the bucket here. It's nothing. So, you know, training, not just running on flat ground, but running in hills, you know, up steep mountains with weight, that kind of stuff. You know, anything you can do to really just get yourself in top physical shape for this, because it's certainly physically demanding. But again, the physical aspect of it, when you can do that and when you can hang, it pays off. I mean, it really is rewarding. And you know, after the first few humps I had with the guys, there was a tangible difference in the way they related to me. And hey, chaps, how are you? Good to see you. You know, that wasn't there beforehand. So it certainly is worth investing in.
I had always had an interest in the military, always had a drawing towards it from putting model airplanes together as a kid with my dad and going to air shows and just kind of always just having an interest in it. And so the calling that I kind of was sensing, it was a slow one for me. And my greatest fear was just, I didn't want to be away from my family. And so I kind of always pushed it away and pushed it off to the side. And God kind of just kept it there for me and just said, I think this is where I want you to serve. And so that's kind of where, how I came in. It was shortly after September 11th. That was kind of the confirmation. I had been processing the paperwork, and so shortly after that occurred, that was kind of the confirmation for me that say that what you're doing is the right move, and this is where God wants you to be. I guess for me, I've served North Island, down in San Diego at an air station, served on a ship, served at a training command, all mostly Navy, and then coming up here, and the distinctions for me were just the culture itself is completely different. Sailors are completely different from Marines, and so that to me was just, there's more of a sense of closeness, I think. I get a camaraderie, just a brotherhood. The units are just much tighter and closer together, and I think that's due to some of the sacrifices that they've made side by side with each other, and whereas the sailors, they don't seem to go into harm's way as much in terms of the overall the population. Certainly the SEALs and the corpsmen and they will certainly go right alongside. But the sailors that serve on the ships, it's just a different culture, different communities. I kept waving my hand to the detailer and said, hey, can you please send me to the Marines? That's where I want to go, that's where I want to serve. And just everything I'd heard, everyone saying, that'll be your favorite tour, you'll love that the most. And kind of just seeing how God has wired me and how I'm kind of built and designed and just kind of where I wanted to serve. That was, to me, I wanted to go serve with the best. That's where I wanted to be, right alongside them when they were in the moments of their, the need, the spiritual need was the initial component. A lot of men really respond to God in times of great trial and difficulty. And so Marines are put into those circumstances what seemed to be a lot more, and more occasions and more circumstances. And so I wanted to be that man that could stand there if they had those questions, if they had those moments where they were reaching out to God, that I would be able to be right there with them, going through whatever they were going through, and I would be right alongside them and just be able to provide that need. Right, I actually just got back a few months ago serving with the 1st Combat Engineer Battalion. So we were deployed to the Helmand Province in southern Afghanistan, and it was a great experience for me. I absolutely loved it. The engineers were primarily, the primary mission for them was what's called route clearance. And so they were trying to clear the roads of the obstacles of the improvised explosive devices, the IEDs, and those were the main hits that we were getting on not allowing the movement of our troops and forces to maneuver around the battle space. And so that was kind of the main mission for them. And so I had the opportunity to go out with them all the time. I was always raising my hand, hey, do you have an extra seat in one of the vehicles? And I would get in the vehicles and just go out with them as they would find these IEDs, try and find them before they found us, and disarm them, and just make the way safe for the other Marines and troops that needed to move around the country and to go engage with find the bad guys. As we would travel to the infantry positions in these forward patrol bases or forward operating bases, and maybe their chaplain hadn't been out to see them, hadn't been able to move over to them or whatever, so I would just literally find these guys out in the middle of nowhere, and I would just show up and say, hey, and they would say, hey, we haven't seen our chaplain in a month. He just hasn't been able to get to us or something. Well, hey, let's do a service right here. And so we would do a Bible study or a field service and have a time of prayer with them. There were times when guys, one of their brothers had just been killed the day before. He'd been shot and killed. And so they're wrestling with that, and they're struggling with just trying to cope with that. And so just being there. And there were other moments where the IEDs would be going off. They'd stepped on one in a cornfield right outside the compound we were staying in, and so three men died that morning. And so just being right there as they're coming back in from their patrols, and sometimes going out and patrolling with them, having those opportunities to be right there with them in those moments of where literally the enemy is all around you, and literally they're being shot at and every day, and engaging the enemy that's right there. And so that to me was the most rewarding ministry, the moments of my life that I'll never forget, and that really God used to strengthen my faith, but I think also used it to strengthen theirs as well, as they were able to, again, be surrounded by those trials and the dangers, and to see how God kept them safe, and how God, was working in their lives and in their hearts. So it was neat to see. I grew up as a kid, and I mentioned I was interested in military things, but I'd never been camping. I'd never been out in the field. We did family vacations to hotels or something like that. So I'd never once been in a tent or knew how to set anything up. I had no land navigation skills. I had nothing at all. And so, if I were to advise anybody, I would say, hey, go spend some time doing that, so that when you show up, you don't look completely, helpless and hopeless. And so that would be one thing I would encourage the guys: read up on some military history and some background, and read some books and learn about what we fly, what we drive, what we shoot, and that way I think you'll be better equipped to not speak the language in a sense, but have an understanding of what the equipment and the things that we use, and even for Marines especially, the history of, they cherish those things, and the warriors that have served before them, and those that have paid the sacrifice. Read and learn about some of those things. Not only is it just very interesting to learn about, but it's the things that they still honor, and they still remember, and they still pay tribute to many of these fine warriors that have served before them. And so that to me would be something important, to learn the culture and the customs and the things that have gone before. Talk to retired Marines, talk to people that have worked with Marines, whether they're chaplains or corpsmen or anybody like that, so that you can just gain, and they'll tell you, hey, this is the chaplains that did these things. They were the best. I'll never forget them. Or they'll tell you what they think. And so take and learn from those things. I think that you'd be better equipped to be more successful in serving with the Marines. The main thing for chaplains, the relationship with God has got to be the number one priority for them. And if they're not deepening their walk with God, shame on them. That should be the priority, because of we've had colleagues that have gotten into trouble, and we've had things, and just like anyone in any profession and anything too, we can be tempted from sin, and we can fall. And I think we're seen as the moral compass. We're seen as, we should be the experts spiritually and ethically, and we should be all those things as well. So that's got to be the priority in our lives, in everything that we do, so that we can set that as an example. I think it's also profitable for us to set the example physically, and just having the mindset of a culture of fitness and maintaining those high levels, so that we can lead from the front, and we can show them, hey, I'm a naval officer, and I want to show the best. They think they're the best. The Marines are taught that. That's how they're indoctrinated. So when we show up there, we can say, okay, balancing the tension of not being arrogant, but being confident. And showing that, hey, I'm here to serve you guys, and having that humility as well to show them, hey, you're taught how to kill, you're taught how to do all those things, but I want to also show you the line that you can walk, and to love, to show compassion for other people. And so I think just, again, the important thing for chaplains is that love for God should be the priority, but loving others. And I think that'll be very apparent to those that you come in contact with in your ministry, whether or not, wherever that ends up being, that if you have those things as the foundation for your life, you'll be able to make a difference, and you'll be able to serve and have an incredible time, and something you'll never forget for the rest of your life.
I came into the Navy in January of 2008, and I reported here at Camp Pendleton in April of 2008, as this is my first assignment. Before the Navy, I was a priest. I'm an Anglican priest, and I had a church in Palo Alto, California, where I was for 3 years. And before that, I was 4 years in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with a church in Harvard Square. And then before that, before I was a priest, I was an attorney in South Carolina, and I practiced law for 9 years, doing environmental regulatory work. So I came into the Chaplain Corps because it's difficult. It's one of those itches that God gives you. I had a very good ministry, wonderful parishes, wonderful people, and I liked it very much. But there was just something else that seemed to be missing, a itch that regular parish ministry wasn't scratching. And so this itch was in the back of my mind, and then 9/11 happened, and I remember reading articles about the shortage of chaplains in the military as a whole. Became very interested in it that way. So I became interested first in the military chaplaincy. Then the reason I chose the Navy was primarily because of family. My grandfather was a Navy captain, and he did something along the lines of what I did, only as a doctor. He came in middle-aged as a physician into the Navy. So, and I'm named for him, so sort of a family connection. I got here in April of 2008, and I had been, at that time, was the battalion chaplain for the 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. Initially, that spring and summer, we were doing workups in preparation for deployment on the 13th MEU, where we set sail in January of 2009. So, one of those patterns. Initially, you spend your first few months, particularly since it was a first assignment, not only learning about the Marine Corps and the different setting, the culture, the language, but about the military also in general. So that happens. Then you get into the training and the workups, the physical conditioning. Then most of the fall of 2008, we were doing sea exercises, getting ready for the MEU. Yeah, so I asked for the Fleet Marine Force. Wanted to be with the Marine Corps Infantry Unit for a spiritual reason and a physical reason. I was attracted, as I think a lot of chaplains are, by the Marines, by that intangible sense of spirit that they have, which it's not just courage, and it's not just fidelity, it's not just faithfulness to each other and to the Corps, but I don't know, maybe a lot of them don't like to hear this, but it's really rooted, in my view, rooted in love. There's love for their country, there's love for the Corps, there's love for each other, and it's infectious. It's a good thing to catch, but they have a very high level of spirit, of a developed sense, I think, of honor. A lot of these young men are very mature for their age. They are brave and professional. And so for me, I had a hunch that it would be a real honor and privilege to be around them. And so it has been, because I think there's a lot of God hovering around the Marines. So yes, I asked for that. There's also a practical reason, because I am, as you get on in life, as you grow a little older, being with Marines, particularly with infantry units, physically demanding. So there's the practical aspect of just being able to physically do it. And as you get older, that becomes more difficult, the humps and the PT and whatnot. So I wanted to do it at my youngest stage, so to speak. So the deployment, we took off in January. In general, the nature of a MEU is you have to be ready for anything, and we were. You are like an emergency response force out there in the ocean, where the Marines can be going if trouble erupts. You're like a police car patrolling a bad neighborhood. We were primarily Western Pacific, Middle East, Africa, in that area. We did theater security operations, where we would go into various countries like Maldives, Oman, Jordan, Djibouti, and work with local troops, training them. We did anti-piracy ops, some not humanitarian relief, but humanitarian projects. And we were mostly at the ready. We weren't called into theater because sometimes the police car in the bad neighborhood, nothing goes on in the bad neighborhood. But it could be because of your presence. Because the police car is there, everybody behaves. So that's what we did as a MEU. In terms of my ministry, the MEU, we had 3 ships. I was the battalion landing team chaplain, so I had detachments on all 3 ships. I was on the USS New Orleans. We had another infantry company on the Boxer and another one on the Comstock. So even though we were dispersed a good bit, I still made an effort and was about a month on the Boxer, going around to the various units, ministering to them. Most of my ministry was when we were at sea, was on the New Orleans, where I had shipboard Bible studies. I had a weekday Holy Communion service. The ship's chaplain and I alternated taking Sunday worship services. I had morning prayer every day, and an evening prayer along with the Bible study every evening except Wednesdays. Then when we would go into country on these theater security operations, would say Holy Communion. I would do field services, and of course, both on ship and in the field, a lot of counseling. Everything from marriage and the stresses of deployment to Red Cross messages that Marines or sailors may have gotten. You know, while you're out there on deployment, a lot happens back at home. Loved ones die, problems develop, but also, great things happen too. Children are born, things of that nature. And as a chaplain on the ship, you're a connection, particularly when communications are dicey. You're sort of a connection to back home, I think. So we did a good bit of that. We did ComRails, community relation projects. We were bound in Bahrain for a long time because we had an accident where a submarine hit us. To make good use of that time, in the chaplain's office, we had daily ComRails to a couple of schools there in Bahrain for autistic children. So the Marines and sailors could go in and work with them. And then we were in Thailand. We had a full day project where we went to a very poor village way back in the jungle and painted and fixed up a schoolrooms. So those are the kind of things we do on a ministerial level. And also ran the United Through Reading program, where Marines and sailors can record reading a book and then send it back home for their kids. I think the main body of knowledge I wish I had received was sort of an instruction on how practically to get the chaplain plugged in to Marine Corps operations. When you're in chaplain school, you hear a lot about, well, it's important that you get out into the field. It's important that you get out to with the Marines. It's important that you go training with them and all that. And all that's absolutely true. But then when you come to the unit, all that stuff's in motion. And you have to know how to get plugged in. You have to know, it's not terribly difficult, but you just have to know which shop to go to, who to talk to, and get plugged in so that when they do go in the field, you'll be included. If there's going to be a field exercise, you know as a chaplain, I have to get out to the various units. I have to get out to the various companies. Well, how do you do that? How do you get a vehicle? How do you arrange to get from point A to point B at a particular time on a particular date? So it's more of how to, I guess, in a nutshell, would be how to work with the S3 shop in planning your involvement as a chaplain. I think that's the most important thing that I wish I'd learned, because so much spins off from that. If you're involved and if you're out there, even if you if you're arranging things on your own before the operations guys start automatically plugging you in, then it feeds on itself. If they see you out there in the field, out there with the Marines, my experience was that they are very positive about that. It's a welcoming, you get a welcome reception, a lot of positive feedback. Then what will happen over time is that the CO will demand that you be with these units so that things get set up for you. But initially, how to get yourself plugged in, I wish I had been better acquainted with overall Marine Corps structure and organization on the battalion level and on the regimental level, and how the various parts work. Be in shape, because when you first plugged in, it's your most difficult time, and in many ways, it's your most blessed time, because you're not chained to the computer. You may not even have an email address at first. And I'll get to that in a second. But when you come and you first get in with the unit, the best way of getting to know the Marines that first week, that first month, in my view, is through PT. And it's going down to the gym at 06, 07 and PTing with them. And you want to be in somewhat good shape so that you don't make a spectacle of yourself down there. PTing is a great ministry. Marines are sort of closed to outsiders, and you being Navy and being a chaplain and being the new guy are sort of an outsider. But if you will endure some physical suffering with them off the bat, you gain a lot of legitimacy. Also, go on humps with them and runs with them. So you need to be in shape so you can hit the ground running on that score. The second piece of advice I would give is, if you come from a small denomination or sort of a cocoon, just prepare yourself for a lot of different religious perspectives. It's a very diverse, religiously, most Marines and most sailors are Christian, but they have various views of Christianity. Third, I would say, beware of the computer. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a double-edged sword. You can get a lot done with the computer. It can help you with your ministry. networking, reaching out to the community and whatnot. But it could also be a slave owner. You can become enslaved to it and end up spending all your time just sitting in front of the computer reading emails, because you get dozens and dozens and dozens of emails. And you almost have to discipline yourself to schedule time for responding to those so you can get out and walk the line, be out there with the Marines. That's where your ministry is. It's not in the computer. And what I've seen personally is a lot of chaplains spending most of their days stuck behind a computer. Some of that is necessary sometimes, but just beware of it and limit yourself to computer time, because your ministry is out there with the Marines and the sailors.